Hello everyone. Today I wanted to film a video talking about the 20 books that I've read so far this year. I obviously don't usually film like wrap-up videos, but I got the desire to today. I've read some amazing books so far this year, so let's do it. Also, you may notice that my shelves are quite different. I did film a reorganization video and I'm very excited to share it with you, so that will be coming after this video. So yeah, look forward to that. But yeah, today let's talk about the books I've read so far this year. But before we get into that, I want to thank the sponsor of today's video, glassesusa.com, my absolute favorite place to buy my eyewear for so many different reasons. I love that they're able to cut out the middleman, which means that they are able to offer prescription eyewear at up to 70% off retail prices. So this means that you can shop for prescription eyewear online in the comfort of your own home and at affordable prices. And it's honestly just so fun going on the website because they have a virtual try-on tool, so you upload a photo of yourself and you can see how all the glasses are going to look on your face. So I love doing this and looking through all the different selections, and they have such a large selection to choose from. So they actually have over 6,000 styles on the website, and this includes eyeglasses and sunglasses. And they have in-house brands like Amelia E and Muse, some of my favorites, as well as more designer brands like Michael Kors, Gucci and more. You can also add any type of prescription to almost any frame on the website, and this includes their sunglasses and blue light blocking glasses. So you can get a complete pair of glasses, so the frames and the lenses, starting at only $30, and free basic prescription lenses are included with every frame. So it's quite something. And another incredible thing is if you don't know your prescription or if you don't have it on you, they actually have a free prescription scanner app. And all you need to do is download the app, use your phone's camera to scan your current glasses, and the app extracts the prescription details that way. Like, incredible. It's FDA listed, easy to use, and accurate results are ready within 10 to 15 minutes. So yeah, it's really easy to order off the website. Standard shipping is free on all orders, and if for some reason you're not happy with your order, you have 14 days to return for a full refund, product exchange, or 100% store credit. No questions asked. So today I wanted to show you my current favorite glasses that I'm constantly switching between. So the first are these frames. Absolutely love them. I just love the shape. I love the cat eye. Really nice quality, and this is one of their in-house brands, Amelia E, one of my favorites. Then we have these. These are the Muse Francesca. Absolutely love these. I love the shape. I love how it's like quite a thick frame on top and then more light on the bottom. It's just really fun. Love them. And for sunglasses, I love these. These are the Amelia E Holly, and I just love the shape. Once again, I just feel so confident when I wear these, so definitely my favorite sunglasses. So if you want to get any of these frames for yourself or any other eyewear off glassesusa.com, you can use the link in my description. I'll also have the links to all of my styles that I've shown you in my description. So thank you so much to glassesusa.com for sponsoring this video. Now I decided I'm going to talk about the books from the ones I've most read to January, and I'm sure that my memory is going to be a bit more hazy with the ones in January, because January honestly feels like it was 10 years ago. Like, what's that about? Anyway, If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha. I actually finished this last night. So if you watched my readathon vlogs, I picked this up for the readathon, and I actually started to read this for the first time in 2020 maybe, but it just wasn't the right time. But this was definitely the right time for me to pick this up because I loved it. This basically follows 4 women in South Korea, and it's about them dealing with the struggles of living in contemporary South Korea as a woman. So all the struggles that they face, including misogynistic men, intensely high beauty standards, and you know, from that synopsis alone, like, yeah, I knew I was gonna love this. So yeah, really interesting insights into what it's like to live in contemporary South Korea. Yeah, it was just really interesting to read this and then talk to my mum about it, who did live in Korea for a long time, but she hasn't lived there in like 20 plus years. So obviously it's changed quite a lot. So it was just really interesting to like read this, talk to her about it. But yeah, definitely a book I recommend. I also just love books about women, and this definitely has some messy characters, and I've mentioned multiple times on my channel that I love when characters are more like flawed and messy, because obviously that's more reflective of the human experience. Yeah, just love it. Then I'm really excited to talk about Still Alive by Safta Ahmed. I actually read this yesterday in one sitting because it's a graphic novel, so didn't take that long. And wow, one of my new all-time favorites. Like, I am in love with this book. So basically this is non-fiction. It's a graphic novel, like I said. And basically in 2011, Safta Ahmed visited Sydney's Villawood Immigration Detention Centre for the first time. And he brought his art supplies to draw sketches of the people in the centre. And this book basically contains the stories of the people that he met there. A lot of refugees are treated like criminals, and it's very disgusting, and the conditions of these detention centres are very inhumane. So it's really important to educate yourself and hear stories from people in these detention centres, especially if you're Australian and you don't know much about the Australian ones, because yikes. it is disgusting. It really makes you angry reading this book. It's very heartbreaking, but I really love in the back the author puts some resources for further reading that you can do and also what you can do to help. So I'm actually going to leave some of these links in my description. This book is just so incredible, and I feel like non-fiction graphic novels is where it's at. If I was in high school, I feel like I would have enjoyed learning this way much more than, like, you know, just reading text. So I honestly just want to go to like all high schools in Australia and just be like, read this. Like, this should be required reading. Some of my favorite passages from this book. I used to draw weird, morbid visions inspired by horror films and heavy metal music. I still do. Some argue this stuff will bring more negativity into your life, when in fact horror aestheticizes fear and anxiety in such a way as to transform them from sources of dread into vehicles of fascination and enchantment. Rather than bring the darkness, horror releases it. Exactly. I can't stand when people say that horror is just like a stupid genre just for like jump scares and stuff. Like, sorry, there's so much you can do with the horror genre. Like, exactly. And in the beginning of the book it says, art can be helpful for trauma, which the brain codes differently to other experiences. Traumatic experience forms a hot memory which spills through time and space, meaning it can be relived and felt as though in the present. Its narrative context is lost, allowing it to penetrate a person's everyday life. Trauma fragments memory, creating deeper experiences of sadness, fear, anxiety, and shame. Art and storytelling allow trauma to be visualized, externalized, and re-embedded in its context, which provides a greater feeling of safety and distance from it over time. In this sense, art can help us process our experiences on some level. So it's just so beautiful because the people in this detention center use art to convey their emotions and convey their experiences, and obviously the whole book is told through art. So I just love it. Like, it's truly incredible. And I was actually telling Caitlin, like, no offense, you need to buy this, and we were on FaceTime and she was like, oh, I can't really find it, and I'm like, ew. So then I looked it up and it actually kind of is hard to find. I hope that I can find a link in my description for you to get your hands on this. I saw this in a bookstore when I went to the Blue Mountains recently and I was like, oh, this looks interesting, never heard of it, and I'm so glad I picked it up. So yeah, honestly, this might be the book I recommend the most from the books I've read this year. Like, I just loved it. So powerful, so important. Okay, then I read Flux by Ariadne. This is her first poetry book. If you haven't heard me talk about Ariadne by now, I'm literally obsessed with her. Like, she's one of my new favorite humans. Of course I needed to read this. And you know those people that you find online that you just feel like a connection to? That's how I feel about her. I just feel like we have so many similarities, and she's definitely a hopeless romantic like me. That is definitely reflected in this poetry collection, so I can definitely relate to this. So basically this is a collection of poetry all about like love, heartbreak, healing from heartbreak, all of that. So I just want to read this little bit from the acknowledgements. To the ones who broke my heart, thank you for once loving me. What was once a magical bond between two people has turned into a righteous, unbreakable self-love like no other. Amazing. Loved this. Then I listened to the audiobook Journey of a Thousand Storms, a refugee story by Kushia Karimi. And this is a non-fiction audiobook about Kushia Karimi, and he is Iranian, and in Iran he was a doctor and he was kidnapped by the intelligence service, and he's been marginalized since birth. He's Jewish and he was living in an Islamic state, and he was a member of a political group that opposed the government. He also started to use his medical skills illegally, saving unmarried pregnant women from death. So he was snatched from the street and jailed and tortured, and he escaped finally to Turkey, where he faced further struggles, and he eventually made it to Australia and he was able to forge a new life for himself. And this book was incredible. Once again, an absolute must read in my opinion. Obviously an important story to be told, but also a very captivating read. Really well written. You definitely can tell that Kushia Karimi is a natural storyteller. Like I said, I listened to the audiobook, I teared up multiple times. It was just so powerful. So I highly recommend the audiobook for this one. But yeah, just incredible. Then I read About Death, which is a webtoon, and I read this for Readathon. This is a Korean webtoon, and it's basically about people who are passing through life going into death, and it follows this guy who talks to all these different people passing through. And I knew I was gonna love this because I just find, you know, that whole time period when you're about to enter death really interesting, because obviously there's lots of reflection going on, there's lots of talk about what you regret and stuff. So I really loved this. It definitely makes you think, definitely makes you appreciate life, definitely makes you cry, and I just loved the art style as well. I loved how it had the music to accompany it, which, by the way, can you hear that rain right now? That's quite stunning. Very cozy vibes. But yeah, definitely has gotten me very excited to read more webtoons. So if you have any more recommendations, please let me know. I do have some on my list, which I'm very excited for, but I'm really excited for this new webtoon journey because it's so fun, and a lot of them are free to read on your phone, so that's amazing. So yeah. Then I need to talk about Cursed Bunny, which is a collection of short stories, and I'm not going to talk too much about this because I did talk about it quite a lot in my Readathon vlog, but this is basically a collection of horror short stories that explore themes of like the patriarchy and capitalism, feminism, and I loved most of them. Some of them were not the vibe. Not that I hated them, they were just like kind of boring and weird, not in a good way, but most of them I really loved. So my favorite short story was 100% Goodbye My Love. That was incredible. But yeah, feminist horror comedy, social commentary vibes, absolutely, thank you. Then I listened to the audiobook Your House Will Pay by Steph Cha, and this book is set in the 90s and it basically follows two families. It follows a Korean American family as well as a Black American family, and the lives of these two families are intertwined in a very complicated and heartbreaking way. And basically this book is about these families. Obviously it explores racism, police brutality, complex family relationships, and I really loved it. Definitely a heartbreaking read, but really well done, and once again really recommend the audiobook because they had two different narrators, so definitely was a captivating reading experience. And wow, that rain is actually very loud. Hopefully you can hear me. Then I read Winter in Sokcho, and honestly don't talk about this too much because I'm actually quite sad that I didn't love this. I didn't hate it, I just felt like it was quite lackluster and I had really high hopes for it. Basically it's about this French Korean woman who is in Sokcho and she's at a guest house, and this French cartoonist man who comes in and they form a relationship and explore Sokcho and Korea. And it's definitely a very quiet book and not much actually really happens. It's definitely, you know, a very unique story, like in the way that it's told, and I do wonder if a huge reason I didn't fully connect with it is because of the translation. Maybe, you know, the magic got lost in translation for me, but I have seen lots of people read the English translated book and absolutely love it. So I'm hoping it's just a me issue, but I definitely, yeah, thought it was just quite lackluster. Like I don't really remember much from it. Nothing really stood out. When I finished it I was just kind of like, oh yeah, okay. You know, let's not talk about it. Then I read Burnout: The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle by Emily and Amelia Nagoski. And this is a non-fiction book, and this focuses on specifically why women experience burnout differently to men, which definitely intrigued me. And I did feel like this book was quite inclusive. It did talk about trans women, non-binary people, as well as how race comes into play. It probably could have done more on that, but you know, I appreciate what it did do. But yeah, this book was pretty good. I don't think it's like, wow, amazing, you have to read it, but I definitely did learn some interesting things from it. One of the best things that I learned from this book is you need to complete the stress cycle. So if you have something that's stressing you out, obviously you want to deal with that so you don't have to be stressed anymore. But you also need to complete the stress cycle by letting your body know that it's safe so you don't have that stress anymore. So some of the ways that they said you can complete the stress cycle is positive social interaction, breathing, laughter, exercise, affection, hugging someone for 20 seconds, supporting your own weight. Ever since I read this book, I've been like, let's hug for 20 seconds. It's honestly been really helpful. So yeah, definitely some good learnings from this book. Okay, then I read Film for Her by Ariadne, who I talked about earlier, and this is her second book that she came out with, and it's basically a storybook of people, places and memories captured on film. So this book has different snippets from Ariadne's like journal, I guess, so different pieces that she's written up, different photographs she's taken, different poems, and I loved it. Absolutely 5 out of 5 stars. I would definitely be reading this whenever I need to like feel inspired. I just love collections like this, so yeah. Beautiful photos, beautiful words. It honestly inspires me to write, so absolutely loved it. The Magnitude of Torture. I used to run from the hurt. Now I just let it swallow me whole into the mouth of inadequacy until the thought of agony sits on my tongue like a warm and bittersweet aftertaste. Okay, then I read I Have More Souls Than One by Fernando Pessoa, and I loved this. I did talk about this quite a bit in my things I've been loving recently video, so I'm not going to get too into it, but basically this is a Portuguese poet, and this is my first collection that I've read from him, and absolutely loved it. I definitely want to read more of his work. Yeah, this is basically like an existential poetry collection. It's quite like melancholic. If you're like me and you're always asking yourself, who am I, what's the point of life, all these things, then this book will probably be for you. What do I know of what I shall be? I who don't know what I am. Be whatever I think, but I think so many things, and there are so many people thinking of being the same thing, of which there cannot be all that many. There were definitely moments where I'd read it and I'd be like, oh god. But yeah, incredible. Okay, and then of course Ariadne by Jennifer Saint. Absolutely love this book. Once again, I'm not going to talk too much about it because I did also talk about it in my things I've been loving recently video. Wow, this book will 100% be on my favorite books of the year list. Like, if it's not, that's going to be concerning because this is one of my new favorites. Like, it's just incredible. It's basically a Greek mythology retelling about Ariadne, and this book is all about women's pain, the forgotten woman in Greek mythology, the strength of women, the bond between women. It is just beautiful. Jennifer Saint also just has an incredible way of writing. Absolutely beautiful, kind of like Laini Taylor-esque, I would say. That kind of like whimsical, just amazing writing. This is definitely one of those books that completely transport you into the story. And if you know me, you know I don't really care about a plot. Like, obviously an interesting plot is fun, but most of the time I'm here for the vibes and the characters and the meaning of the story and stuff like that. This was the first book in a while where I was like, oh my god, what's gonna happen next? Like, it was really fun because I haven't felt that way about a plot in a while. Loved this. Highly recommend it. Then I listened to the audiobook Hood Feminism, which is a non-fiction audiobook on feminism focusing on misogynoir, and once again I believe I talked about it in that Things I've Been Loving Recently video. Highly recommend it. Definitely very informative. Definitely brought up some issues in feminism that I hadn't read about in other feminist books. Yeah, really well done audiobook. Then I read Fiona and Jane by Jean Chen Ho. Don't remember much about this story, but I definitely enjoyed it when I read it. I don't feel the need to like scream it from the rooftops, but it was a really nice story. It's basically about these two women, Fiona and Jane, who are Taiwanese American, and the story is told over 2 decades, and it basically is about these two women navigating their lives, being young, navigating their sexuality, friendships. Yeah, it's definitely a very quiet book, which is probably why I can't remember it too much, but that definitely doesn't mean I didn't enjoy it once again. I definitely really liked it, and there were definitely some passages that really moved me and that I really connected to, so I do recommend this book. It's also really quite short, so it doesn't take that long to read, and you know, I just love stories about especially women navigating life and just being like, what's all this about? And then I read Horror Store by Grady Hendrix, and I read this because it was on the Audible Plus catalog, so I was like, oh, okay, I'll read that because I've heard about it over the years and I've been recommended it, and it was a fun time. But, you know, nothing special in my opinion. It's basically a horror story about this group of friends who are working at this place that's similar to like IKEA. So the cover definitely looks like an IKEA catalogue. And I think in the beginning it even says like, this isn't supposed to resemble IKEA or something like that. But obviously it is. And you know, it's a fun concept. It's them, you know, in the store and all these like weird things happen. So it's definitely a fun time, a fun, silly, goofy horror time. I didn't think it was that scary. It was more like disgusting at points. But yeah, an entertaining read, but quite forgettable. So I guess pick it up if you want a silly, goofy, quick horror time, but I don't think it's like, wow, you need to read it, you know. But a book that I do think you need to read if you haven't already, Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. Absolutely incredible. I can't believe I hadn't read this book until this year. That's actually disgusting. Although actually it's not disgusting because I think this was the perfect time for me to read it, because if I read it a few years ago, I don't think I would have appreciated it, and I feel like I actually would have misinterpreted the whole point of the book. But yeah, obviously this is very popular, so I'm sure a lot of you have read it, but wow. I remember when I was reading this, I was telling Caitlin, I was like, I know this book is popular, but I feel like people don't actually talk about how good it actually is. And she was saying that she thinks that it suffers from the classic book getting super popular, that the popularity is kind of the main focus rather than the actual story. And I feel like that's so true, because I definitely knew like, oh yeah, Gone Girl was like popular, but there is so much in this story. Like, it's actually so incredible. Like, you could write a million essays on this. Every time I reread it, I feel like there's just gonna be more to dissect. I just loved it. Like, the commentary in this book. And I actually found this a really hard book to read. Like, I felt very down and angry at the patriarchy and everything. And it can definitely be a lot because, yeah, it really highlights women's pain and men being disgusting. Obviously incredible. And I definitely will be rereading it at some point, and I'm excited for that day. So yeah, obviously incredible story, like really interesting plot, but the main thing I love about it is the commentary throughout and the insights that Gillian Flynn makes. So can't wait to read her other books. Then I also read Life of the Party by Olivia Gatwood, which is a collection of poems. And in this collection, Olivia Gatwood basically talks about the struggles of being a woman, and this specifically focuses on true crime cases where women are the victim. And I really like what she said in the beginning in the author's note. If true crime sought to confront the reality of violence against women, it would not rely so heavily on fear-mongering narratives of cisgender white girls falling victim to men of colour. Instead, it would acknowledge that Indigenous women experience the highest rates of homicide, often at the hands of white men. It would depict the stories of the several transgender women murdered each month, or the countless black, brown and Indigenous women who have gone missing without so much as an investigation. The language of true crime is coded. It tells us our degree of mourning is contingent on the victim's story. While students and athletes are often remembered for their accolades and looks, book, sex workers or women who struggle with addiction are reduced to those identities as a justification for the violence committed against them, if their stories are even covered at all. The truth is, it is a privilege to have your body looked for. True crime, while being a genre that so many women rely on for contorted validation, is simultaneously a perpetrator of misogyny, racism, and sexualized violence, all of which is centered around one beloved dead girl. It is a genre primarily produced by men, a genre that complicates how we bond over our love for it, often unsure of who identifies with the victim and who identifies with the perpetrator. Amazing. And yeah, I just love the poems in here. Okay, then I read Culty by Mariana Zapata, and I did really love this, but I'm not going to talk too much about it because I recently have been informed that Mariana Zapata has some quite transphobic lines in her earlier works that she has not addressed. So I've decided for now I'm not going to talk about Mariana Zapata on my channel. But yeah, moving on to the next book, Hold Me Closer, Toni, Danzig. This was a fun holiday romance, and I read it really quickly. I remember I was mowing the lawn. I have a really vivid memory of that. And I'm pretty sure I listened to the whole thing while mowing the lawn. It was definitely a shorter audiobook, and I really didn't like this. I wanted to read this because it was supposed to be like a fun, queer rom-com, and I was like, let's have some fun. This beat is sick. But the beat was not sick because it was just like weird. Like I really didn't connect to the characters. The characters honestly said some weirdo things that I was like, what's that about? I didn't write down the specific quotes, but I remember thinking I should have because I wanted to share. But I honestly didn't know if I was even going to talk about this book. But yeah, just definitely a letdown. But if you have any other fun queer holiday rom-coms, let me know because I would definitely love to read more. And finally, the first book that I read this year was The Cost of Living by Deborah Levy, and I don't have my copy with me because I have lent it out to a friend. But yeah, loved this a lot. It was definitely the perfect time for me to read this story. It's non-fiction and it's like an autobiography of Deborah Levy, and it's basically a searching examination of all the dimensions of love, marriage, mourning, and kinship. And yeah, definitely loved it. I loved the writing style. It kind of read like a novel, even though it's non-fiction, so definitely a unique non-fiction. And I'm excited to read Deborah Levy's other non-fiction books because this is actually part of a series called The Living Autobiography. So this is actually book 2, but you don't really need to read them in order. But yeah, lots of good insights in that book. But yeah, that was definitely a stunning start to the reading year with a 5-star read and stunning non-fiction, which I'm obviously reading more of. And if you have any other recommendations, please let me know. I would love to know like your top books you've read so far this year. Actually, what is my favorite one I've read this year? Jokes, I already know. I think Still Alive is my favorite that I've read this year. But I've honestly read some really stunning books, so I'm excited for the rest of the year. I feel like I'm going to hopefully continue reading amazing books. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. Once again, I'll have the Glasses USA links in my description, and thank you so much once again to them for sponsoring this video. I appreciate it a lot, and of course I appreciate you all a lot. If you're looking for more content from me, I have a Patreon linked in my description, and that is where I upload extra content like extra reading vlogs. We do a monthly live show, we do a monthly buddy read, etc. I have all my socials linked below, including my Twitch, which is twitch.tv/gamewithchloe, and that is where I stream games and just chatting. So yeah, I hope you're all having a good day or night, and I'll hopefully see you in my next video.